All right, everybody, welcome. This has been I guess not a long time coming, but my guest here needs some level of introduction. Sorry, Adam 22.
Danny,
Yeah,
what's going on?
I'm excited to have you in WTF Media. This is awesome. I feel like I'm following on the shoulders of giants with the Rory Mal podcast. Remember when they responded to Joe? I feel like this is exactly that studio, even if it's not in my head. It is.
See, I've been to WTF Studios a few times, but I've never been in this room. I don't believe so.
Yeah, I think you did Mass podcast here, right?
Yeah, but not this room.
Yeah, that was like
Very exhilarating.
Very exhilarating. Okay. Well, welcome to New York. You're back in the city. How's it feel?
On the day of Taylor Swift's album being released,
Yes.
which we haven't listened to yet, so I have no opinions about it. But
Okay. Okay. Are you
I'm gonna have opinions about it.
Okay. Are
eventually.
you a Taylor Swift? Are you telling like Brick Baby he needs to listen to it?
Man, I can't imagine asking that of him,
Okay.
but that would be cool. Yeah, that would be great.
I know last time you said you was trying to get people to listen to the Vince Staples or watch the Vince Staples show and listen to the Kanye album. So I thought
That was a challenge.
That was a challenge.
I don't know if they ever listened to the Kanye album. No, it was the Schoolboy Q album.
Schoolboy Q.
About, yeah.
All right. Okay. Well, we're back, and I feel like I saw an interview of you with somebody where the guy
This coffee sucks. Dunkin'
It's
Donuts
Dunkin'.
sucks ass. What the f am I doing? Okay.
I don't know. You knew what it was when you signed up, right?
It's like I have like a memory of what it was like back in the day that just really did not live up to on that first
How old were
sip
you?
right there.
How old were you when you?
This was like my childhood.
Oh,
But I didn't really start drinking coffee till like mid-20s.
but I mean, you're much younger. Your taste buds ain't as experienced, maybe.
I don't know.
Nostalgia. Duncan always sucked.
I'm gonna keep drinking it too. But
Okay.
ugh. Okay, keep going. What are you saying?
No. I was about to say that you started a media firestorm.
Oh right, yeah.
Yeah, by shooting at the Podfather.
Don't put in quotes. That's you gave him that name.
No, Podfather was Bill Simmons. He was the first one to be called that.
Oh really? Okay.
Jalen Rose called him that on a podcast, and that was his moniker. And then Joe kind of usurped it, but I think he's trying to reframe it from a different population. So Bill was the first Podfather, but Joe just ran with it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know a lot about him.
You don't know a lot about Bill or Joe? Okay.
Joe more than Bill.
Okay.
Well, I don't know.
Yeah. So you set it off.
I did.
You popped it off. What? There's a lot of people who feel like you're trying to get his attention. Do you feel like that's what's going on?
I already got his attention. The only reason why I said it was because he said something about me. Like I had been mostly quiet about sleepy Joe Budden until he on Axe podcast. And for the record, he laid down the parameters of what we were competing on because he started talking about my views. He didn't talk about money. He didn't talk about takes. He didn't talk about influence. He said No Jumper's views are way down. I acknowledged that our views, in fact, are doing great. A problem is that you have to combine the Clips channel with the main channel. Many people lack the coherent ability to do the science on this sort of thing. So you see like him say that, and then I pointed out that in reality, our network, our two channels has like 3 times as many views as his. So if we're talking about views, I feel like if anything, when you look at his social blade, it's looking pretty rough. It's been a long time. It's basically been since the Rory Mal exodus, I believe, since they had any kind of spike in viewership on YouTube. So I don't know why he's trying to make our views the topic of conversation.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because there's this theory that No Jumper is dead, right? And I think
it's exclusively the
haters,
terrain of people who are not paying attention, like Sleepy Joe Budden.
Okay. But why do you think that persists? Because I feel like obviously after any big co-host leave, there's gonna be a down thing. But it seems like you've largely rebounded in terms of the storylines, the vibe, the co-host and all of that. But it still persists, and maybe it's just people want to see you down.
And a lot of people don't seem to grasp that, like, for us, the majority of the views have always been from the interviews. But then to a lot of people, they're not really interested in listening to a bunch of interviews with drill rappers, underground rappers, etc. So they kind of like resort to judging the podcast based on our prior glory, where, you know, there was a point during COVID where we had, you know, every night live streams, you know, with like 200K or whatever, 200K plus, which is something that I don't really think anybody in hip hop has ever really done in terms of creating a network on one channel where you had multiple shows doing 100, 200,000 plus views. And so there was like this real heyday, especially during like COVID, 2021, maybe like 2022, it starts to wind down because like a lot of people kind of miss the point that that era had already kind of ended by the time that those guys left. Like the glory days of No Jumper being this big network or whatever, like a lot of those views had already kind of disappeared because they were doing such a phoned in bullshit version of the podcast. So yeah, it's like now, like No Jumper, the standard by which we used to be held was basically just like, oh, they interview people and that's good enough. Now it's like we have to have multiple different live stream shows going every single night, and they all have to like, you know, hit a certain kind of target. But I would say that, you know, right now we do have like a really great team of hosts going, and I'm not, there's like zero part of me that is like, oh, it was so great when AD and T Rell were delivering the most half-baked, boring podcast episodes that anybody has ever seen in their life. Like they could do the worst content imaginable on their own platform as they are currently doing. You know, it's like, for me, they left thinking that they had it all figured out, and we all got to witness that they absolutely did not. So I feel like Sleepy Joe is trying to like, he's trying to capitalize on that because you've seen him, like he co-signed AD, brought him on the podcast. That did nothing for AD. Somebody like Academics, Ack wouldn't even know AD if it wasn't for me. But you know, AD has gotten like every big cosign that you could possibly get in media, and yet.
Yeah, I think AD, I don't know why. There's just something that isn't clicking. Like I don't want to take shots at AD, but it just like when he's solo, it seems like he defaults to whatever bigger personality is in the
But
room,
the
whether
crazy
it be
thing is that
or...
in order to get the same view count that he used to get, he now needs a whole room full of people. But meanwhile, like he's not a good A mic. So it's like he'll forever kind of be boxed out of that conversation. And then the really crazy thing is that now they have a new podcast on FiggMunity and they X AD out of that. So he's like the first person who's ever been kicked off a podcast on No Jumper, and then he starts his own media company and they kick him off the podcast on there too. So like they, even like the other hosts on FiggMunity kind of realized we can't keep potting with this guy.
Okay.
He's dead weight.
Okay. Well, I just wonder, where is this energy? Because I feel like you coming in hot with the FiggMunity, but is it because of their recent admission that they said they were trying to burn the house down?
I mean,
even though it was obvious that that might have been...
That was kind of astonishing to me because they're so bad at lying. They're so bad at like keeping their fake stories together. Like I would think that if I was trying to pull the wool over everybody's eyes, that I would be a little bit more coherent in how I communicated about it. But no, I mean, this is the shit that I always say because I just want, you know, I want the people at home to always remember that the peak of AD's career, both in terms of like lifetime earnings as well as, you know, attention in terms of making good clout or whatever, like the best spot that he's ever been in his entire life was when he was at No Jumper, and it's just been nothing but downhill ever since then. And I just like, I don't want that narrative to get lost in the sauce because I think it's important for people to really like learn from his story. Like AD's story is a teaching moment for young podcasters that you don't need to try to burn the house down on the way out, especially if you don't have any talent. And then you definitely don't like just the way he went about everything was the wrong way to do it. So I don't like to just let that be. I like to like consistently kind of remind people you could be like AD if you don't appreciate the put on that you got from somebody else in the industry, you know?
So it's like a cautionary tale is what you're saying.
AD is a mega cautionary tale, yeah.
Okay. But I guess I'm trying to like see, I'm trying to be like not too, I'm trying to see it from AD's point of view. Like maybe AD does have... What?
He knows he f***ed up.
How do you, it's like you know this already.
I've seen leaked text messages from him with other people. I shouldn't say leaked because I'm the only person who's seen it. But like I've seen text messages from him like wholeheartedly acknowledging that he's down bad now and that leaving No Jumper was a mistake. So it's like I wish I could share those to the world. I wish I could just I guess I could just show you privately. But like generally speaking, I understand his mentality way more than he will let on camera.
Okay. Well, I mean, I guess when you leave a platform, there's this initial like support where everybody's like happy that you left, and we saw Rory Mal where everybody's like, "Oh, you left Joe. He's a terrible person." But then reality can set in, and it's like you're saying, "Don't burn the house down the way that they did, but how did they burn the house down? Was it just like, say, throwing narratives out there
Yeah,
about
they
why
just
they're
made up a ton of fake narratives about all these different stupid reasons why they left. And it was just like, you know, there's such a thing as having like real grievances. I think Rory and Mal had real grievances.
okay?
I don't think AD and T Rell have. And that, or that they did. They have had multiple conversations on camera where they attempted to like come up with some kind of coherent version of why they left. And it's just so obviously bullshit. It was some self-serving. And it's like, I think if you're somebody in the podcast world and somebody is cool enough to put you in a position, then when you leave, you should not intentionally go out of your way to craft a bunch of lies about that person. And I think that when you look at what they did, like that's what they did. And they deserve the 22 Stars wrath for all of time for
22 Stars
their
wrath.
behavior. And like they should expect me to be enjoying it as they fail. So it's like
Okay.
I'm narrating it publicly for the world. If I wasn't who I am, I would start a Danny from the Stop YouTube channel and, you know, report on it on a daily basis. But instead, I have to just drop truth bombs on you in the first 10 minutes of the interview.
Oh no, I love it. I love it because I was like doing this whole big three podcaster thing, but you took me in a different direction, and I think it is. I mean, it's like I remember after they left, you were initially. I don't know if this was genuinely true to how you felt at the time. You kind of looked like you didn't want to go in too much. Like you was trying to be like more understanding, more reflective, more pensive. And now it's like, hey, let's rip the Band-Aid off. F these guys.
I mean, I think like I was kind of affected by the fact that so many of the fans were bamboozled. And like so many of those fans have kind of like left comments and reached out to me and let me know that like, hey, I can't believe that we actually thought that these guys were next up. And yeah, I don't know. That got to me for a while where I was like, oh my God. Like, I don't know. For a while, I started to actually believe that I was the problem.
Okay.
And now I realize that that is absolutely not the truth and that they, in fact, were the problem
Okay.
and that they, in fact, made the bad decisions and stuff. I mean, the only real thing that you could give me in terms of like what I did wrong was just that I didn't nurture the egos of them as much as I possibly should have. You know, I thought that they would just like long-term understand that like how much I had done for them and that they wouldn't do the exact kind of thing that they did. And I was let down to see that, but you know.
All right. On the bright side, though, I kind of see what you say about AD maybe not being a good creator. But T Rell, I think, is dope. Even though I know you too.
He's falling off rapidly because it's all word salad, you know. Like when you see him next to somebody who actually knows how to podcast. Like I remember seeing a bunch of clips from when Van Lathan went on their podcast.
He's great, yeah,
bro. Like it was brutal.
Yeah,
it was like a alien civilization just being met by like a superior being, and it was just so like in that moment I was just like, oh bro, like you are not cut out for this. Like this is like that Van Lathan thing more than anything else just really convinced me like, oh like you are ass. Like you are not going anywhere. And I feel like in a way he kind of almost gets that now.
What? No, I mean, I can see, like, I know when Rory went to the FiggMunity guys, I was like very taken aback by how little research they seem to have done.
Oh yeah, but that's their whole thing. I don't think T Rell has the capability to like sit and study someone and look them up and like you know every interview I do is like a couple hours on the internet researching them. You know, I think he's like way too self-absorbed to do that. I mean, like even Smack is too self-absorbed to learn the name of the person that they're interviewing.
Okay,
like he recently interviewed somebody that I interviewed. And like, while my interview was obviously superior, Smack couldn't remember his name like 5 different times in the interview from like, you know, everybody's posting this shit in the Reddit. So, I mean, you know, it's T Rell more than anybody who's ever podcasted needed the propping up of something like No Jumper, you know?
What does the propping up of No Jumper mean? What does that look like? Like, what do you do to put these people in successful positions?
I think you like put somebody like them in the arena with somebody who really knows how to podcast. If you allow me to kind of like guide you through that process, that's going to like really cover up a lot of the flaws that are now incredibly obvious to their fan base. And then on top of that too, it's just like bringing in this built-in audience. But like, again, these dudes have been propped up Sense No Jumper by Academics and Joe Budden.
Yeah.
Kind of hard to think of like a bigger cosign.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't do anything for them because ultimately the product is not good enough to bring anybody in.
Yeah, I do feel like I know when Joe started talking to me on Twitter Spaces and Joe started talking about me on the podcast, I kind of got fearful because I felt like being under the radar is where you really can work. But then when people draw that, you think the cosign is going to be big enough. But yeah, no, I understand what you mean. It seemed like there was a very coordinated attempt to prop up both of them after that whole breakup. But I know this is a wild tangent, but we could talk about it. Rory and Mal, though, like, how do you feel their breakup is different in terms of how they responded to the split from Joe Budden? Because I feel like they actually may have put in the work. There was ups and downs. Do you think like they've rebounded a bit? It feels like there's a resurgence with that platform.
Even last night when I was mentioning the Rory and Mal resurgence, Academics had to like at least acknowledge that they're having a moment of sorts. You know, he was trying to minimize the moment, but he was still acknowledging that. I mean, I've definitely like tuned into Rory and Mal clips and been a little disappointed, but I think that like some of the clips I've seen recently, I'm kind of impressed of like, okay, I do think that they're two smart dudes who, given time, they're just going to keep improving.
Yeah.
And I would not shoot that bail to AD and T Rell. I think given time, they're actually getting worse and that they will probably continue to get worse because they just have so little of a foundation to build upon. Whereas I think Rory and Mal, you know, I think that they really are passionate about this. And I think that in the long run, that will serve them. But, you know, I don't think like the thing about me is that I feel like I'm like a rapper in the sense that most of the rappers I know, they like couldn't stop making music if they wanted to. Whereas like I feel the same way. Like I couldn't stop doing podcasts and interviewing people if I wanted to. If somebody told me that I had to stop, it would be like the most painful thing in the world for me. And I guarantee that my mind would like just convert that energy. I'll probably become like a TikToker. I would be like finding a way to like communicate with the public through social media one way or another. But I think that when you look at AD and T Rell, they don't really have any passion for this. They just want the status of being known as content creators. And really they're trying to like make up for their prior failures in life in general because AD failed as a rapper, T Rell failed as being Tyga's friend. And so they're trying to like excel at something, even if that something is really not something that they have any particular passion about, you know?
I think T Rell's trying, man. I feel like you're kind of underselling T Rell. Like he didn't he rearrange his whole set?
He got a new set, but that's like optics, you know?
Okay. Still, it shows some type of drive. Like I think AD set looks the same, right? He looks
his basement. Letting all those people in your basement is crazy. I don't know.
All right. Well, we'll see. Well, last to wrap up where the truth bombs are dropping. Where do you see the FiggMunity world guys in like 2-3 years?
Oh, Skid Row.
Oh my God.
Like you know, nothing positive. I got no positive expectations. I don't know.
All right, so now you let Lush back on the platform, right? Do you ever see some type of
BBL? Bring back Lush.
Bring back
big
Lush.
movement.
I love him.
Yeah.
You know, it was funny seeing you talk to Lush. It was like you rekindling a romance, like where you were like talking to him, like, you know, Lush,
Hey,
there's no one I've ever spoken to who can take the conversation where you take the
no Diddy. But no, I agree. For sure, like Lush is like, I had to ultimately kind of like be willing to get past the fact that I felt like he kind of backstabbed me and betrayed me at a certain point. It's been like a bit over a year. I do think that he's like mega capable as like a hip hop conversationalist, and I think I need that. You know, like I need somebody who's willing to, you know, I feel like Lush is humble in the sense that Lush knows that he's good at talking about rap, but he could be better, and that, you know, if we're gonna really have these conversations, that we need to pay attention and work on stuff. But he's somebody who's like already really paying attention to shit. So there's no, like, for me to get Brig Baby to watch the Vince Staples show definitely took many texts. Okay. But for Lush, like he already had seen it by the time I mentioned it, you know? So for Lush is just kind of like such a natural for me conversation wise. Now, like the negatives about Lush is like, obviously his mental state is sometimes in a state of flux. You know, it's like, I don't know exactly 100% where he's at. I wanted to get into this the other day with him, but I don't know 100% where he's at in terms of his mental health / drug and alcohol intake. So that stuff is stuff that I'm sometimes kind of worried about, is just that, you know, sometimes he's really tempted to like mega engage with people in terms of the online chatter. But I also feel like he's somebody who, our fallout was so bad, and now that we're back cool, it's like I kind of expect him to be a different version of himself and to like carry himself with a little bit more decor. And he's kind of like said that without me really prompting him to say that. But ultimately, I just feel like I could probably have better conversations about rap with him and Brick Baby than anybody else that I know.
Yeah, I've definitely had relationships with people who maybe dependent on drug usage or sobering up, and I will say that history usually repeats itself.
Mm. Well,
And
I
you
could
just gotta
definitely
be
thug
prepared
it
for that,
out
yeah.
through some relapses,
Okay.
but hopefully that doesn't affect the show, you know?
But I feel like you've implemented structures to protect yourself against something like maybe telling Lush who you're taking off the show or
Well, in general, like at No Jumper, I don't really feel the need to like let everybody in on everything. Like a lot of times people will be like, oh, there's a mole or whatever. But anything that's like really important is not stuff that's really being like talked about freely with people in general anyway.
Okay. Well, I think now we can go back to how I had initially want, but I love this.
Right, the big three.
The big three. You left Joe out of the big three. Did you really mean that? Because I feel like you love Joe as a content creator.
I feel like I was talking about views and I was talking about platforms. And I feel like when I look at Joe Budden's network, that he definitely failed at creating a network and has essentially given up on that, which, you know, myself, sometimes I think about giving up on that. You know, like I love the news. Sometimes though, like with the nighttime shows, it's like it takes a lot of production. It takes a lot of direction. And sometimes it's like the reward isn't 100% there. And you feel like if it really does get going good, that at some point that people are just going to kind of try to do their own thing or whatever. So there's like it's easy for me to understand why he fell back on the network thing. But as far as like people who've built really, really big platforms that are capable of like creating careers for people, I mean, I haven't seen him do anything to like create stars on his platform aside from the Rory Mal exodus. And I think he did everything possible to try to like, you know, kind of keep them in their place. But when I think about who's like the kings of YouTube, for sure, I think about me, Vlad, and Wack. And so what Joe's doing is dope, but I don't really see it as being at the scale of what me or Vlad or Wack has built.
Okay. Yeah, no, you said something that I'm going to come back to later. So, the scale. Well, I feel like Joe did try the thing, like what See the Thing is with, and they broke up without him,
He
right?
couldn't keep his hands to himself.
Oh my God.
He was groping shit.
Are you talking about that
What's her name?
Olivia Dope?
Olivia Dope. She got felt up and then she got paid off. That shit crazy.
You never had to pay nobody off, Adam? Come on. You never, not even like sexual, just anybody. All right. I feel like that's just the cost. Well,
Sue me.
sue me. All right. You got to take it to court.
Yeah.
All right. Okay. You got to go all the way.
You got to go all the way with me.
Okay.
You got to lawyer up.
All right. All right. Well, he did try to create a network. Obviously, there was hurdles that he had to jump over. There was the Olivia Dope situation.
How was that a hurdle? He set up that hurdle. He's the one who couldn't keep his hands to himself. You've been in the strip club all these years and you don't know that you're not allowed to grab all on the fucking female talent.
I remember watching that episode. It was stood up for like a little bit too, and then
I remember
she came out, made a comment, and they took it down.
Mm.
You saw the episode? Like
I remember that clip going nuts when it first happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, man, I had my channel at the time. I was like, I should have probably saved this on my.
I need to with Olivia Dope.
Oh my
God.
God.
She blacklisted by the fucking the Black Effect New York Cool Kid Club.
Everybody's under the Black Effect umbrella.
You're in that too? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a fucking banner right over here.
Yeah.
People at home can't see it.
Yeah, yeah. I pretend like I don't like Charlamagne, but secretly he owns me. So yeah, I'm sorry, letting y'all know.
We just did the sign.
But yeah, no, I don't know if Olivia Dope is blackballed. I would assume she just got a nice settlement and laid low.
She would be welcome at No Jumper.
Oh my God. All right. Okay, well, back to the big three in media. You have academics, you had Vlad, and then but under what metrics is Joe in your top three? Because you seem like if the metrics would have changed, he would be.
If we're talking about hot takes, like people who are able to consistently go viral off of having a outlier opinion about the culture or whatever. I think it's pretty obvious that him and Ack are the main people in the culture who kind of have that superpower. And I guess even you can maybe just throw Charlamagne in there, because I don't really see that as being like me or Vlad's strong suit to necessarily like be the first person to come out with the crazy take that's going to go viral or whatever. So I'll definitely give him that, but I feel like that's different than the big three conversation. Now, if you want to talk about like individual commentators who are like making the most noise, you got to give them some props in that regard. But like again, this whole conversation started because Joe was critiquing my view count, and as I've explained many times, we get like 3 times as many views as the Joe Budden podcast. So I don't know. I just like my big three conversation was very much in retaliation to him making that comment. So that's where I got to keep it.
It's so yeah, it's kind of like I feel like both of you guys are so brilliant in terms of how you guys make content. I think to me, you're amazing. You're great as an interviewer. That's like I think you're the best interviewer in this landscape. And Joe's obviously the best performer, I think, of everybody. You're also really good at spotting talent. Like I've seen you take people with like no type of background and put them on, and they're able, obviously there's people that don't succeed, but there's a lot of people that have, and there's for some reason that you're able to do this over and over again with people like Brick Baby. I was gonna say someone that I was like, I don't know if I should add them to that, but T Rell AD, like you saw something in these people, you put them at a platform, and they were able to anchor some of your shows. And even if you think AD and T Rell are doing bad now, they still have an audience that they were able to retain. But
it's diminishing, but yeah,
it's attrition. But yeah, so I think the way you run No Jumper is really interesting because you're always trying new things, even with think pieces. Like you started doing think pieces, and I'm like, wow, that was mind blowing. Like, yeah,
I've been thinking about that for a long time, just because I feel like the whole scripted genre or the like commentary genre is like kind of very, very big in podcasting in general. So like, yeah, let's bring somebody in. Let's try doing it ourselves. So I mean, that's definitely been an interesting thing to attempt. I don't know, like exactly. I don't know. I'm not sure exactly 100% what the audience thinks of it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of weird to imagine. Like, I don't know. Do they thrive on negativity so much that the content needs to be like, because you even know, like some of the first ones that we did, I told you like, we got to be a little bit more less biased, or like this is going to seem like state propaganda if it's kind of like agreeing with me too much, that kind of shit. But yeah, I mean, I'm definitely always down to try stuff, you know, like if you look at the origin of the channel, you would have probably never thought that we would be doing these like weekly shows, never mind having people doing shows that I wasn't on and that. So definitely gotta keep just trying from my perspective.
Well, that's how companies become huge, right? Twitter, wasn't it a podcasting company first, and then it started to
Twitter?
Yeah,
really?
It was like Weibo or something.
I feel like they've always been micro blogging from day one. But
yeah, it was.
I had Twitter in 2008, I think.
Prior to that, like 04 or something like that, they was
really
looking into podcasts, and they were like trying to emulate Blogger with audio. But they pivoted towards like a text thing. Yeah.
Interesting.
I remember I read the book on Twitter. But so I want to harken back to something you just said. You said that Joe Budden did stuff to keep Rory and Mal in place. What do you mean by that?
I mean, okay, you could put it on them as well, but I always thought when I saw him trying to branch out and do the podcast network that, I mean, he should have had Rory or Mal. Like the way I would have done it is I would have said, Rory, you're going to do a show a week, and Mal, you're going to do a show a week. You want to make more money, you want to make more content, you want to use your time more wisely, let's like give you your own thing. Whereas like, you know, one of the podcasts he started, they were like female led, well, like the one with Mandy and shit, which is like, that's already a stretch to get your like mostly dude audience to watch chicks. Like that's always going to be really difficult. Okay. I mean, that from our perspective, that would be like the hardest thing to pull up. Like I see, to pull off, I see it all the time that it's like very, very difficult to get our audience to like really with like a female host long term. You know, that's difficult, and that's what they chose to attempt to do. But I mean, I thought that he should have tried to build shows around those guys. You already got like existing talent. I understand it's tempting to just keep them on the one show, but I feel like that would have been the thing that would have made a lot more sense. If he had done that, if Rory had a show that came out one day a week and Mal had a show that came out one day a week, that would have been like the ultimate. If they had really been able to build something out like that, and now you're world building. If you get to see Mal and his two homies that we've never met before, and they're doing a podcast now, like the problem is that most people only have so much gas in the tank for the week. You know, like even going beyond doing 1 or 2 podcasts a week, it does get very difficult for the average person to have like a lot of takes. Even for me, like if I had to do the No Jumper show 3 times a week, it would take like a lot more labor to like really land on topics that I was excited to talk about. But
I think from my studying of Joe Budden's network, he did want that to be the vision, but I believe their business was in such tatters that I don't think Rory Mal ever trusted.
It was already too up by that point.
Yeah. But well, I guess you have it. Like I think you and Joe will be back cool again one day, and it's gonna be cool.
That would be cool, but I don't really know what the path there would be like, because, you know, I just don't know. Like, is there someone who's gonna like step in and be like, you guys need to sit down and have this conversation? I don't know that he really gives a fuck enough. I would be open to it. I'll acknowledge that I'm not like married to beefing with Joe for life, but I also don't really like, I don't know. Like, I don't really see myself going out of my way to build a bridge. I could definitely see somebody like acting as the middleman, but then also like, you know, you've seen Joe not get along with with Vlad for 15 years.
Yeah, you said something interesting.
There's a lot of people who could potentially get between that and like patch with them.
Yeah,
I don't know.
You said something interesting that you said that the people Vlad doesn't get along with usually don't get along with, right? On Vlad, I think you said that with.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is textbook with if Joe and Vlad don't get along, maybe you guys won't get along.
Well, they don't get along for like a ridiculous reason, like something that Vlad posted on the blog with him and Ransom back in, you know, like 15 years ago, 20 years ago. For me and Joe, it was just like him kind of being like weirdly opportunistic and jealous, I think. You know, like I think he was mad that I fucked up that I fucked him up in that episode that we did together, which was like, you know, and then I think he was even more pissed off that I did a little victory lap and was like, you know, rubbing it in people's faces on the podcast, that his own Reddit said that I washed him in the debate and everything. And then, yeah, I think that's just like, and I think that like also us having success with the network thing where he failed, I think that was kind of like hard for him to take, that there's this like white boy kid that is like a fan of his, and that I was like outshining him in terms of like the type of business that he was trying to create. I can understand why that would be sort of tough for him to take. But like also anytime he tries to act like I'm not talented or anything, I mean, he reached out to me. Like I never reached out to him. He reached out to me and then told me that he thought that he wanted to hire me to be on State of the Culture, and basically like told me to my face that I was like one of the most talented people podcasting wise that he'd ran into. So, I mean, he could never say that I'm not good at what I do, because I've already had massive W's in fields that he's pretty much exclusively taken L's in. And when he didn't have anything to gain from me, he made it perfectly clear that he thought that I was extremely talented. You know, I think that he felt the need to go against me because he kind of saw where things were going, and he realized that him trying to take away from me was like more important than him savoring our relationship, you know?
It seemed like the tone kind of changed when you posted the Tahiri story where she said Flacco did that.
Flacco did do that.
All right. But it was not you?
Well, actually, I shouldn't. I for the record, I haven't posted on the No Jumper Instagram in years. Okay. Many years. I think it was Flacco, but it might have been someone else. But either way, I mean, it was posted, and then he felt a way about it. And I mean, I honestly don't even really remember the details of that. But
yeah. There might be a value in y'all not being cool. So I don't know if y'all need to be cool, because if at the time you were saying that you should have texted Joe about that story before you did it, that might
well, I don't even think I was involved in the discussion, but it was just like it went up. And then I remember I was like getting on a plane and he's like texting me like, why the did you post this or whatever? And I'm like, bro, I don't have anything to do with this. And I don't know, somebody on the team thought that it was newsworthy, whatever. I don't know. It's just like, it seemed newsworthy at the time, I believe, from their perspective. And then he tried to say it was all old, but it's like, you know, if well-known figures in the culture like Tahiri, who he built up, are going to be making claims about him, you know, is that not news?
Okay.
They talk about me when I'm in the news. But honestly, I don't even remember the details of like what was posted in that because I didn't really have anything to do with it.
I kind of vaguely remember, but I mean that's already
Like
past.
probably the same saying forever.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
All right. I wanted to talk about this. It's not a got you question. I don't want you to feel like this is a got you question. I just wanted to flesh this out. This idea that you're a culture vulture, right? I'm sure you've dealt with that being suggested or people asking you that. I feel like that was the undertones of your debate with Almighty Suspect about you not knowing about hip hop. And what do you kind of think about that?
I don't understand because I'm in the culture.
Okay.
More than almost anybody. Like more than almost anybody who would try to take that away from me. You know, the only thing that is not of the culture of me is that I'm white. Like if I looked like academics, nobody would ever be able to say that about me, right? Well, it would sound insane.
This was one of the questions I have after this. Is like I feel like everybody now is being accused of being a culture vulture, regardless if you're white. Like I remember academics. Oh, you're not from America. You're not of the African American.
Right.
Yeah.
He's not FBA enough.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of like there is a discussion to be had, but sometimes I feel like the people generating it just don't like the person. So they latch on to maybe a narrative that is rooted in some level of truth, but it's really, I don't like you.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's probably no insult that I take less serious than the culture vulture thing. Like, to me, that's just such an obvious admission that you have nothing to really go on, you know? Like, to me, I don't think anybody really, even when I hear people say it, it's just, I don't believe them that this is actually how they feel. They just don't like me, and they're just looking for a excuse to not like me, and it's cool. Like, but I mean, what makes me different than everybody else? Like, people would call Vlad or me a culture vulture when we were kind of like very, very early. You know, if you said that about Vlad in 2015, it might seem like a valid opinion, but now if you're going to put that on me or Vlad, then you pretty much got to put it on a whole shitload of other people too. And like people of color that, like, you know, nobody says that shit about them. I just don't take it serious because I don't feel like there's any kind of like real weight to it. And it's just, it's like a dead observation. Like, it doesn't do anything. It's like when I had that episode where we're arguing with Joe, that was essentially what he was trying to put on me. And I felt like nobody was going for it. And I remember Axe saying like, this is like a 2015 ass argument. Like, this is just not gonna like really sway people at this point in time. Like, we're all making content about shit that's going on in the culture, whether we're actually interacting with the people that are the subject of the conversation, or we're just having conversations about people without them being in the room. And that's just like the most normal thing in the world, right? Like, that's just what people do now. Like, what do you have to do to be like a vulture? I don't know.
Well, I'm trying to somebody that you also have a history with, Dame Dash, somebody who takes from the culture and doesn't give back, doesn't reinvest in the culture. I'm trying to think of famous examples, like someone like Jerry Heller, where you know he probably never listens to hip hop. He probably just doesn't care. He just sees the value of Eazy-E as a monetary sign. That's, to me, culture vulturism.
But if you actually look at my track record, like, I've consistently discovered / broken / like exposed underground rappers and like people who are on the come up over and over and over every year of my career. If you look at No Jumper right now, and that's why I don't understand that take, is because if you look at No Jumper, aside from like, you know, the weekly conversations and everything like that, it's basically just a bunch of interviews with a bunch of people who would probably never be able to be on a platform as big as No Jumper. And I'm really like kind of doing the work for somebody like Joe Budden, who might find out about some of these rappers in like 6 months. You know, like, I'm kind of propping these guys up, and I've found ways to make content with a lot of people who like don't even have 1 million views on their videos, but are able to do like really fascinating interviews with me. And to me, I feel like that's like everything that's right in the media space, is that I'm taking people that, you know, are underutilized or, you know, need discovery, need to be just to have more eyeballs on their shit, and I'm propping them up and putting them into a position that other people aren't. Like for as far as like me, like what would be way more culture vulturous for me is if I was really working on finding these rappers and then signing them and then working their career. That would feel like more like that to me, because then I'd be really spending my time investing in them making as much money as possible. For me, I'm more about like taking these people at a very early stage in their career and just, you know, propping them up and like helping them get to the next level. And yeah, obviously like we need to make money along the way in order to be a coherent business. But I really struggle to figure out what the negative thing is about that. And I feel like everybody is reaching when they try to turn it into that.
Well, I think to me, there's an undertone that people feel about monetization of gang culture. And that is where a lot of this probably changed for you, where maybe there was people who were on the platform and the gang politics were kind of undertones of their podcast. You see it in an extension of the podcast that left your network, where seems like the branding is gangs. And
they're not even actually from that gang.
Oh my God.
Just like using it for their image, or it would be like me starting like a Crip
so
podcast.
I could do that. You see that guy?
Right. I mean, you have every much right to do that as T Rell. Yeah.
Yeah. The stop sign is red because it's a stop sign. No other reason. All right. Just want to be. But yeah, it seemed like that was kind of where the situation changed, but that was probably going to happen to you regardless. And also just covering gang wars or something like that.
Well, like the whole beginning of No Jumper was mostly like underground rappers, SoundCloud rappers. Like if you really go through the interviews, it takes a while before I actually start connecting with like street rappers from LA. I think that G Perico might have been kind of like the first street LA rapper that I interviewed. And that might have been like 2017. So like 2015, 2016, I really wasn't like tapped into like LA street rap like that. And like consistently since then, I've just gotten more and more immersed in the underground of what's going on in LA and stuff, as well as other cities. And it's like, if you want to do good coverage of Chicago or LA or New York, you kind of have to start understanding what's going on in the streets at a certain point. Like that's the subtext of so much of this stuff in terms of like, why do you have beef with so-and-so? Why did you say this about this person in this song? A lot of times you can't have those conversations without understanding the street shit. So, you know, there's a lot of things I don't do, but like, you know, I'm not going to interview somebody from a certain gang and just say like, oh, so you don't get along with these guys, you know? But I will say, I saw you on Instagram Live and you said this about this person, you know? And like, I consider that to be, you know, when I bring things to the table that have already been discussed online, I don't really feel like I'm crossing that much of a line. And you know, people consistently and over don't answer those questions. You know, I'm always kind of impressed by the way that rappers these days don't want to get themselves in trouble on camera and everything like that. But, you know, as an interviewer, I hold myself to the standard of like, if it's out there, I got to ask you about it. And if, you know, on the podcast, when we're just talking, me and Brick Baby, a lot of times it feels like we're having the same conversation that we would have off camera. So a lot of times it does end up being like, okay, we're going to talk about what's really going on in LA. And if there's people who aren't getting along, like I'm open to having that conversation. We keep shit respectful and like, we're not taking sides and stuff like that. But I think that a lot of people are scared to have conversations about what's going on in the streets. And I'm not really, you know, especially if that shit's being put out there publicly. Like I'm not going and having a conversation with somebody about a gang war that's taking place in LA and then bringing it to the internet. But if it's already taking place on the internet, then I don't see any reason why we can't talk about it.
Yeah. I think, speaking from my experience, I remember when I posted a picture of me and you together after we did an interview, there was people who kind of had this idea that I was going there to bash Joe just because I was sitting down with you. But I must say I don't feel like you made me bash Joe, and then I feel like you just let the conversation flow. Yeah. Which is kind of indicative of you as
like even in this conversation, I don't think I've said anything that was like super unfair to Joe. I'm like giving my analysis of like where he's at in his career and everything. But it's like, and even the shit I was saying about AD, I mean, granted, I feel very much at liberty to give my real opinion, but that is my real opinion. It's not like I'm just acting to get the point across.
Yeah. I will say you did mention Olivia Dope with Joe.
Yeah, but I mean, that's like everybody knows that really happened, right? Like, I mean,
sore spot, I would think, but
I mean, that happened.
yeah,
people are pretty nice when you consider how infrequently people bring it up, right? Like, I don't hear people talking about it on podcasts and stuff. I feel like if it was me, oh my God.
Oh, yeah.
You would never hear the end of it.
Yeah, that would definitely be some. But all right, so I think I was good to unpack it because I don't think you've ever been like directly asked if you were a culture vulture like on something. So I wanted to kind of flesh that out and deconstruct that. But I do. It's gonna seem mad problematic. I do like that you ask the questions that people want you to ask. Like I remember watching Joe interview Lloyd Banks. And he did not ask him about 50. He did not ask him about any of that stuff.
Yeah,
I'm
Joe's
like,
kind of a weak interviewer.
Oh, man, I agree.
He does it very infrequently, so that's a negative. But then also, he likes to kind of talk in circles with him and talk about bullshit, and he doesn't really like get down to the shit people really want to hear about. Yeah, I don't think Joe's really like that great of an interviewer. Like, I feel like he does it very infrequently. I feel like he did that like humans thing that I think was kind of a dud, and he sort of like realized that nobody wants to hear him talk to the guy who killed Osama bin Laden, that there's like people that are better suited to those kind of conversations, you know? And I think that he doesn't really get down to the stuff that people really want to hear about. You know, you can hate on Vlad all you want, but Vlad, if you click on a Vlad interview with somebody, you know that he's going to talk about a bunch of the that people really want to hear about. And that if Vlad interviews somebody a couple times, by the end of the second one, you're going to probably get through to all the other that people actually want to hear them talk about. And I hold myself to that standard. I don't want to just have like a good chummy conversation. Like, oh, let's just show that we're buds.
But it's interesting because when he interviews podcasters, it's very different than when he interviews the people in the music industry. Like when he interviewed Meryl, when he interviewed you, that was Vlad's style. Like, we're going to ask you about exactly what's going on, the controversy. So I'm wondering if he's conflicted, if he understands artists on a deeper level because he's from the artist background, he takes it easy on them. Very softball questions, and I feel like it's doing his platform a disservice.
Yeah. I mean, I almost feel like he kind of gave up on being an interviewer at a certain point, or at least kind of let it take a backseat to him doing the weekly podcast, which I respect. I appreciate someone who just finds one thing that's working and just triples down on it. But yeah, as far as being an interviewer, I don't know. He leaves a bit to be desired.
Yeah. I think it's strategic, but I don't know why the strategy is there. I wanted to ask, what do you think about the hate watchers, man? I know I'm someone who has a lot of hate watchers who just hate me, but in my comments.
I mean, I understand, because there's plenty of podcasts that I pay attention to, at least like peripherally, that, you know, I'm not a big fan of. So I get it. You know, it makes sense to me.
Okay. Because I know a lot of people that claim to hate like No Jumper, but like just watch them all day. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. I don't know.
Too. Vlad as well.
Really? Yeah. I mean, it's like I'm there with a few podcasts, you know, that there's a few podcasts that it's not like I'm going to watch a full episode, but I'll definitely click on some clips to just watch some chaos taking place. So if people have that kind of relationship with our content, you know, I understand that as well.
Yeah. Because I was looking at Queenzflip's channel, and he did like an interview with the guy who left Math Hoffa show, and it like pretty good views. I'm like, why are we so attached to like podcasts breaking up? Like, it's gonna do good views if like like, see, the thing is, didn't have the biggest audience, but you do a video about their breakup, you didn't do good views. So why do we care so much?
Yeah, but I mean, like I was saying to you off camera before, when Rory and Mal left Joe Budden, I like came home and my girl was sitting on the couch on her laptop, and she had just spent $2 to watch Rory and Mal talk about leaving Joe Budden. And I don't even know if she knew who Rory and Mal were before that, but the idea of these guys breaking off from Joe Budden was very intriguing to her, to the point where she spent $2 on it. Same thing with me, like when the whole Call Her Daddy breakup was going on and Dave hijacked their RSS feed and put out that long thing about it. I'm like having to look up like what is Call Her Daddy so that I can better understand what the Joe is talking about, you know, and then I'm watching YouTube videos following up on it. I mean, it's very interesting to people to see a podcast fall apart. I guess like seeing a friendship fall apart, seeing a rap group break up, these are all just like kind of relatable experiences for people to observe, I guess. So I understand, you know, like obviously like so many pages like Ack and Say Cheese and shit that had never really posted about the No Jumper podcast network, had never mentioned AD or T Rell or whatever. When they left, it's a post. Look at all these No Jumper hosts who left. You know, to people that's very intriguing, and people assume that there must be something wrong, so they gotta tune in for more information. You know.
Yeah, it's to the point where the fascination with it, and I think you kind of realize this, like, why aren't the podcasters documenting their own breakups, right? As opposed to letting, people like me or Shigs or why hasn't Joe Budden released a podcast about his podcast breaking up? Why haven't you released a podcast about your podcast?
But I feel like he put out a ton of podcasts about them breaking up, like in the moment. It's just that they probably weren't like laid out in such a way that it would be, like, and that's the problem with podcasts in general, is that, and that's why it opens up a hole for your, like, I don't watch the Joe Budden podcast, and I haven't really like watched it in many years because I just don't have the time to sit there and watch 2 or 3 hours of a podcast. Once in a blue moon, like, I'll be driving somewhere and I'll throw it on and listen to it for 45 minutes. But I mean, your channel is like very helpful. Like, I didn't know what was going on there for years and years. And now I feel like I know all these different narratives because I'm actually like more attracted to watching like a short essay style video about that shit than like listening to a 3-hour podcast. If I had more time, I probably would listen to that kind of, but I just don't really have it in me.
Okay. Do you ever plan on being behind the scenes? I remember Noisy. Remember Noisy?
I do remember Noisy.
Vice's like music.
Yeah.
Like, they kind of didn't have to deal with being called culture vulture just because they were a news organization. They were behind the scenes. There wasn't a figurehead like you. Do you ever feel like you want to do that? Or you said you don't, right? Because you love content.
I feel like if I were to stop doing the content would cease to like really make sense for us to do business wise, and we would probably become like a rap, like a mysterious Instagram promo based media company type thing. Like if I wasn't making the content, I would probably just be like having No Jumper be something that kind of has this like hollowed out feel of just making money off our socials or some shit like that. Like, I'm not sure if I wasn't there, if it would really make sense. And I kind of apply that to like every media company, because like look at Complex, like the economics of them doing Everyday Struggle made no fucking sense. Like, if you got to pay these guys this much money and they're not going to recoup it from sponsorships and YouTube money and shit like that, then like, what do you really have? Like, this is just kind of
soulless.
And now there's a reason why you don't see Complex or any of these other media companies like offering a bunch of people salaries. Like, even me in my head, say I wanted to start a podcast about another topic, but I needed to get like highbrow hosts. Even at the bare minimum, if I'm having dudes do 4 episodes per month, say I got to pay them, $7,000 a month or whatever it is, like 3 different people getting paid $7,000 a month. So you're talking about $21,000 a month. How are you going to make $21,000 a month off a podcast? You got to either have like the ads have to be like super on point from the beginning, or maybe you have to have like the Patreon side of things. YouTube AdSense will make a dent or whatever. But I feel like the idea of just being a company who hires people to do podcasts for you, unless you really are bringing some like extra value to that, like Barstool, Gillian Wallow, like I think that they probably bring in a load of ad deals because they have such a fleshed out ad department, But I mean, if that's not the case, like for me or Joe, like how are you going to be able to start a podcast? How does it make sense? Unless you discover the people super early on, so you're able to kind of like not pay them the right amount, but then at a certain point when if it gets popular, you're going to have to pay them a more fair share. And then, you're going to be losing money up until then. And then once they get popular enough, they're going to try to exit. I don't know. It's a very tough business model to make work. If it was simple, everybody would do it. And I feel like nobody does it now. Like, there's no podcasts in the space that are just owned by this big corporation. We'll probably even see less of that as time goes by.
It's probably more cost effective to do like eat wings in front of a camera. But you ever thought about like doing the Vlad thing where you're behind the camera asking questions? I feel like that would probably hit.
I mean, I admire the business that Vlad built, but like I also feel like I kind of like made the decision early on that like I'm going to be on camera because there's value in me building myself up as a personality in this space. And I feel like Vlad was kind of wise to go the opposite route because he's able to like sub in interviewers for himself a little bit more easily than I'm able to. But yeah, being off camera, I don't know.
I've definitely thought of that. I've definitely thought of like being like swoosh stop TV in the low and the bottom and just becoming like the podcast Vlad. Thought about that. But I wanted to ask about this. Like, you said something very interesting during Lush's second return, the return of the king. You said the King Lush. Yeah, the king of the dot. But nah, you said that you feel the need to be more of a micromanager ever since the FiggMunity fallout. And I was wondering, how does that manifest?
I just feel like there was a lot of things that were taking place with those dudes that I didn't really like fully address because, you know, I'm busy. I'm like getting into like being a dad for the first time, etc. And there was just a lot of little things that I should have like stepped in and, you know, made my opinion clear and let people know what was cool and what wasn't cool. Because I think that like part of what ruined the AD experiment was the fact that he started getting positive feedback from the audience for doing like little rebellious things, like being all loud and interrupting and stuff. And then like he thought that it was like great content for the fans to see him kind of like, you know, antagonizing me when I was really like trying to help him be a better podcaster, you know? And I think that like in retrospect, I should have interjected myself into that so that he wasn't only getting feedback from the audience and stuff like that, or even like, you know, T Rell and like the word salad and like him just like taking 3 or 4 minutes to get like a very basic point out. I feel like, you know, I should have jumped in there and like tried to assist him in like telling him, hey, you need to work on your efficiency of words, and like saying you're an amine after every single sentence is bad for the viewer, because at some point they're going to think like, holy, why am I listening to this? I can't put a sentence together.
Oh my God.
And like, yeah, like I want to be able to, and that's what I love about Brick Baby is that Brick Baby is very like down to be coached as a podcaster in the same way that like if I was a rapper, I would let Brick Baby coach me on like, okay, you should probably do this. With your words or whatever. And I just, you know, I feel like I kind of like owe it to these dudes to get in the trenches and like really talk to them about what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong, because I feel like I didn't do enough of that with AD and T Rell. And, you know, now more than ever, they need that kind of feedback, but I probably should have started that loop earlier on.
Yeah, you give game sometimes to like, I think during the Lush's return, you said, I would love to start this show with your music or like play your music. And I don't even know if that kind of resonated with what you said to Brick Baby. Like, I feel like he probably just heard you say it. I don't know if he's going to produce music for you to use. I was like, wow, that's like a big look. And I don't know.
Yeah, I feel like anybody who's on the podcast or whatever, I try to promote everything that they have going on, you know? And that's why it was kind of a disappointment with like AD that like I thought he would take the No Jumper attention and use it to try to like revive his rap career, and then instead he just wanted to do, you know, more streaming, which is basically already what he was doing with us. And like, you know, Brick Baby's selling these masks and stuff, like he's making money doing these quad masks and that. Like I'm always excited to see anybody on the team doing other businesses, and I always try to support that. But like a lot of times it feels like people just want to do more content because it's just like the easiest possible thing to just kind of like babble into the camera. So
yeah, I wanted to further this. Like, do you have feedback structures in place now, like performance evaluations? Because I don't know if podcasters have that.
No, that would be a great idea, honestly, to have that be like more of a structured thing. So that, but you know, I'm just kind of like so overwhelmed with everything that I have to do, and that's like part of me wants to do less, but it's like it makes no sense for me to turn down an interview that might get 1 million views in total between the clips and the main thing in order to like instead take that hour and a half to sit down and like try to coach the podcast hosts. You know, like it doesn't really make sense for me to use my time that way, but I still need to do more of that because, you know, or even just having other people in place who can kind of like help guide people in the right direction. Because, you know, DW Flame is another one who he's made it clear that he knows that he's not a professional podcaster yet and that he needs help with direction and shit like that. So I got Remo kind of working with him and trying to help improve that stuff. So that's like the ultimate challenge, is like to have these guys have a feedback structure without me necessarily having to be like 100% involved. That'll like, you know, I think that'll really benefit us in the long run.
Yeah, because I felt like when you were talking about how you had to replace, well, you didn't have to, but you chose to replace Lush with DW, I feel like you were talking about, like, talking around things where maybe you didn't say what you said just now, where DW had to grow as a podcaster. You were talking about the Crip pod, becoming the Crip pod. And it seemed to me like as if you were managing maybe someone or not hurting somebody, which is probably good to do on air.
Yeah, I mean, I think that definitely like DW kind of like needs to improve a little bit as a podcast host in general. Like he needs help with like staying on topic and not just sort of like randomly pivoting the topic to be about himself, and a lot of stuff that like I've had to deal with other hosts over the years. But yeah, I mean, I wasn't going to do like a full analysis of like, here's every single little thing that DW is doing right now that he needs to work on or whatever. But I think that he's kind of like shown me that he's pretty open-minded to like, you know, working on that. Like, I think he needs to look at podcasting like rapping, where it's like, you might be like a cool dude, but the first rap that you write isn't going to necessarily be like the one that you should put out, or it's not like you're in your final form. So I think that like, you know, he's somebody that I think he has the right mentality to keep getting better at the shit for sure.
Okay. Well, I want to get to it. Time is evaporating on this booking at WTF Media. Beefs. All right. Ish, man. It's like Ish, you've zoned in on Ish.
But I feel like I haven't said anything about him in a long time. It kind of became more of a Joe thing. But Ish at one point said a bunch of shit about me, so I was kind of shooting at him.
He said it on the pod you were together, or did he say it after?
No, on the pod. That was the weird thing, is that after we did that podcast, I go to my Instagram notifications and I see it's like Ish followed you, Ice followed you, Parks followed you. Like everybody just was with me after that episode because they realized and they appreciated that I went into the lion's den and I like gladly did battle with them, and that I wasn't scared at all. And I think that they all correctly saw that like I was capable of doing real good content, and they were all really positive about that. I think it was like once they realized that the public viewed it as them getting their whipped by a white boy, even though it was like 3 or 4 on 1, I think that was kind of hard for them to take, you know, especially we all know how prideful New Yorkers can be, and
New Jersey.
Whatever, but
that's prideful. That's New York.
Yeah. But you know, like that mentality, I think it was hard for them as like real hip hop heads who feel like they've got like real years in the culture that are more relevant than mine or whatever. You know, like I understand why
more
they're
relevant.
You know, I mean, like I feel like they think that there's something that they've deciphered from hanging out in hookah lounges in Astoria throughout their entire 20s and 30s that me riding BMX bikes throughout the city for all those years didn't give me. Now, I would argue that, but, you know, I think that was probably kind of hard for Ish to take, to realize that you got washed by a BMXer.
All right. Well, it's funny. One thing that I remember was Ice screaming, like, there's a scoreboard on King Von's album.
I know, which I didn't even know about. It's like that was a weird thing for him to be emphasizing, is that you're like more tapped in on the documentation of King Von's bodies than me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really like pick up on a lot of that shit until I saw the King or the Trapper Ross documentary about King Von. Like watching that and like finding out so much about him after the fact, I was like, damn, I can't believe I interviewed King Von and didn't like pick up what he was putting down on a lot of that shit.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope you and Ish get back. Well, I don't really know. But
Yeah, he's cool.
Yeah. Damon Dash. You spoke about him in your Vlad interview. You said that he's hard to work with, and I'm like, what was he hard to work with? Was he just like not showing up on time? Was like, I don't want to talk about that today, Adam.
Well, he didn't want to record at our space. He wanted me to go to his space, even though his space was like a massive pain in the ass in comparison to mine to like actually get it set up. Like we can in 30 seconds click the button and have all the cameras set up and like get a podcast going. And like his space was kind of week, and I would be going there, and I'm having to deal with all these weird ass people that Dame Dash keeps in his orbit. I mean, like, you've never seen a worse crew of people than the people that are trying to like meat ride Dame Dash. And then the thing that really sucked was just that, like, you know, you're doing a conversation with this guy, and you're trying to, like, you know, you're trying to get down to some good topics and, like, you know, really talk about shit, but he's the kind of guy where as soon as he feels like he's sort of losing the argument, he pivots into the personal attacks, and he starts like really trying to obscure the thing that you're actually talking about. And I'm just like, I'm at the point in my life where I don't really like to deal with that kind of shit when it comes to talking about something. Like, that's why I like somebody like Lush, is because I feel like me and Lush can actually talk about the topic at hand, and that Lush isn't going to say, oh, well, you're just saying that because you're white or whatever. Like, you know, that's, I guess, because he's white is why he probably wouldn't say that or whatever. But like, to me, that kind of argument is just so boring. It's just like, so like I like talking about ideas, and as soon as it becomes about identity, that's just like the easiest path to go down. And with Dame, that's like 100% of the time. Like, he's going to go down the identity path. And to me, that's bad podcasting.
It's like cool once in a while, but when it becomes like, you know, he's gonna do it every time, then I'm sure.
It was just bad. Like, I really, like, I wanted to keep that podcast going because it was like 2019 and I didn't have a lot going at the time. Like, the SoundCloud era had kind of ended. This was before I brought in all these other hosts and started to, like, you know, before I discovered CryptMac, before I like had all this like new energy on the platform. It would have made so much, it would have been so useful for me to have a Dame Dash podcast going throughout 2019, but I really had like a bad feeling in my gut of like, wow, I hate going to this place and I hate talking to this guy. Like, I've never had that feeling with Wack, because they are kind of easy to compare because they both are old, crazy people.
Yeah.
But I like talking to Wack in comparison. And with Wack, it's fun. Like, we'll be having the worst argument ever, and then he'll just kind of like, we'll just like smile at me. Like, hey, we're having fun. This is cool. With Dame, it's like, it was just like 100% personal, and it was just so.
Them Harlem cats, man. I remember growing up, and like, I went to school in Manhattan. I was from Brooklyn. Them Harlem cats just love roasting, and it gets like personal, and you're like, are you dissing me? Are you, what's going on? But Wack looks like a good vibe, even. But you said you needed to set boundaries with him during the Vlad interview. Like, he kind of got a little too, you know, attached to you doing content with him solely. That's what you kind of hinted at.
Yeah, there's this rapper from LA, X4, who's blown up, and like Wack has been around him a little bit and co-signed him and stuff. But I've been talking to him since super early on.
Yeah. And
I interviewed him, and Wack was pissed that he didn't get invited to the interview. Now, the thing about this is that I actually interviewed him twice. I did an interview with this OG, this guy Pee-wee, and then Brick Baby. And it was a great conversation, but X4 barely got to talk because you got like he's like a young ass kid, and like you got two older dudes who are like just talking way too much. So then I actually ran the interview back, something I almost never do. I redid the whole interview, didn't put out the first one, and redid it just me and him. And then Wack got mad at me because I did it without him. And I had to explain, like, you never shut the fuck up when we do interviews with people. So if I really want to talk to somebody, like we just did one with Ray J the other day, me and Wack, that'll be out Sunday. And I mean, it's a show. Like, he's just talking way too much. And like, and Selena's bad at it. And Ray J's kind of crazy too with the way he's just like talking the whole time. And it's like, I like doing podcasts with Wack, but if I want to do a serious interview, a lot of times he's not really like where my mind goes because you can't control him.
Yeah.
And I have had conversations with him about like, we got to like rein it in a little bit when we're interviewing somebody. You got to like leave more room for them to talk.
Yeah.
It's a struggle.
Yeah. Allow others to step into space. That's the facilitation.
But I love Wack. I love like doing podcasts with him. But I also feel like, based on what the fans say and what the view count says, that like the fans really like just me and him sitting there talking. But I feel like he's almost kind of like that's more laborious to him than having a guest. So I don't know. But I think that like the thing that really works with the Adam and Wack show is like me and him just talking about shit. And if we do have I don't think they really are dying for us to interview people together. But
yeah,
it is very, like, I could interview someone on my own and then have them on the Adam and Wack show the next day and have it be
totally different,
a totally fresh experience, because it's like having Wack there is just like, it totally changes the whole vibe, you know?
Yeah. Another beef I wanted to get, I was speaking to an adult actress online, one of the Twitter Spaces.
I love that for you.
You love that for me?
Mm.
And she said something interesting about the Plug Talk platform. She felt like it may be exploitative of adult stars. And I was trying to, because I am not as well versed in the adult industry, but I was trying to get to what that is. And I was trying to do the science in a field that I've never done the science in.
Mm.
And do you feel like there's a certain feeling in the culture of the adult industry that feels as if maybe you're using adult stars to prop yourself up and not giving back to the culture?
Honestly, I've never heard that before. But the only thing that people could be critical of is like basically when you do, there's two different ways that you can get paid. You can either do a content trade or you can do like a pro scene where you just get paid by the company. So like a company like Brazzers or Vixen or whatever, like on average, a woman who does like a scene for them is going to get paid something like $1,000, $1,500, maybe $2,000. And with us, we do an alternate way of doing it with Plug Talk where we'll have a girl on and we won't pay her anything, but the content that we film together, she puts it on her OnlyFans and we put it on our OnlyFans. So the bad side of that is that we don't get like a surge in signups necessarily from that girl being on our show because everybody who's already subscribed to her OnlyFans is going to be able to see it for free. But on the other hand, from our perspective, her fans all get exposed to our content and maybe they go sign up for our content so that they can see more similar scenes. But the thing about it, it's not exploitative because most girls would much rather do content trade than just get paid up front. Because for them to have more OnlyFans content is like quite valuable to them, whereas just getting paid like an upfront sum. And I mean, honestly, I've kind of gone back and forth on it because sometimes I wish that we just paid the girls up front and then we were able to like get more of their subscribers coming and like checking our shit. But I also feel like the girls wouldn't necessarily be like super incentivized to push us having done that content with them unless it was on their OnlyFans as well. So, I mean, it's a weird argument to say that it's exploitative because I don't think we've ever had a conversation with a girl who had any kind of qualms about how she got paid or what the whole deal was, you know?
Okay. There was I also tried to do some further science and I thought like maybe when you were making allusions to hooking up with a man and maybe they thought you were kind of poking fun at or something like that and like propping this guy up, taking pictures. I thought maybe I was trying to do the science.
I was definitely making fun of, well, I guess I wasn't really making fun of gay culture. Because like, what do I even know about gay culture? You know, I just like, I don't even know enough about it to lampoon it. It was like, if anything, I was making fun of myself.
Okay.
Like, you know, and the fact that so many people
think you would
think that I may have a zesty arc in the future.
Yeah. Well, I really thought it was real. Like, I thought you might have.
Really?
Yeah, I thought you.
So did Quando Rondo congratulated me on living my true life. And this is a guy who's like basically probably by the average person's standards. And he was like really congratulating me. And I had to be like, bro, it's a joke. And he's like, what the f?
You were turning down walls. Oh, I shouldn't say that. But it's funny because on your personal channel, you lay out like your plans to do these things and nobody really sees it. Nobody really like acknowledges that part of like, this was a plan. Like you did that with the Melissa Stratton thing.
Yeah.
You did that. This is like, this was a strategy that you.
It's like I have this like viral social media persona. And then I will fully have like human conversations on the podcast about whatever else I'm doing. But somehow that doesn't really like cross over. Like people don't really, it's two different audiences.
Yeah.
Like the people who actually want to know like what I'm really thinking about shit versus like the people that will tune into a video of me yelling at Sean Evans into the phone.
Yeah.
It's like two different things, weirdly. You'd think that they would be able to communicate with each other, but
nobody saw that. But I was like telling people like, hey, you actually broke down what the strategy was. It's like, oh, I don't care. I'm going to talk about what went viral.
Yeah. Because I made a whole vlog about me fooling the world and that didn't really, I don't know. It seems like kind of a failed April Fool's Day prank in general. It didn't really get the level of attention that I thought it would deserve. But
no regrets?
I thought it was hilarious, so I can't. Yeah.
The pictures and the branding and I love the dog walk. That was hilarious. That looked like an SNL skit. Like,
Thank you.
Yeah, I love that. Melissa Stratton and Sean, were they really dating or was that kind of like a? Tell me the truth, man. I want to know the truth. Were they?
My assumption when I saw that photo going viral was that the people who posted it were wrong, because I had previously, like right before that, like a month before that, I'm at the and I see Melissa Stratton, and she's with a guy who I understood her to have been seeing for an extended period of time. Then they're like, oh, look, Melissa Stratton's dating Sean Evans. And I'm like, she's not dating him. She's probably just kicking it with him for the weekend or something like that. Once I get, and that's with that assumption in mind, that's when I said the thing about congrats, she has fire. Then I go on to figure out that, oh, they really were seeing each other. I don't know what happened to this other guy that was with her before or whatever. But when I look back at that, yeah, I mean, I do kind of feel bad about that, because I had no reason to like try to disrespect Sean. I really legitimately thought when I posted that everybody was mistaken and they couldn't possibly be seeing each other, because I thought that I understood where Melissa was at in her relationship. But apparently her relationship was a little bit more complicated than I was giving it credit for.
It was a bit open.
Yeah.
All right. Last beef. Academics. It seems like you guys had like a thing where you were publishing, or well, not you didn't publish. Let me take that back. That sounds crazy. But you got the pics, you got the evidence, and are you guys like industry friends? I don't get the sense that y'all are really like cool, but you just did this podcast.
I mean, I feel like we kind of like go at it for content sometimes, but ultimately it's like I think we respect each other, but then also we kind of like ham it up for content's sake. And yeah, but I mean, like, you know, like sometimes I like, even when me and Wack interviewed Selena recently, not interviewed her, but did an episode with her, and like some of the stuff Wack is saying to her, I'm like, so are you actually cool with academics? Or like, you know, because he's like so aggressively like pushing her to give more information about Ack. And I think that most people would not be able to be friends with somebody who was doing that, right? But like they're friends, and you know, probably me and Ack, I guess we look at it the same way, is that like there's just, he's gonna kind of turn up on me when we do content to try to get me to like really react or whatever. And like, I mean, I just see it as content, so I don't really get too personal with it or anything.
It's interesting because sometimes I'm finding out so much about the people at the top of the media game. You know, a big creator in my field asked me for my number, and I was just like freaked out. I was like, oh, I just didn't want to give him my number, because I'm just nervous about becoming friends with people in the industry.
Right.
Like, I don't necessarily trust like that.
Yeah, I don't blame you. But like, I mean, okay, if somebody sent me your pics, I would probably just be like, Danny,
I got
this sent me this shit. Like, just so you know, this out there. But I wouldn't like, I don't feel like you have so entered yourself into the public discourse that I would want to like drag you in that sort of conversation, even if they were hilarious. But with Ack, it's like, it's different. Like, I feel like the rules are just like totally different.
It's a celebrity.
Yeah. So it's like when I do get the academic pics, which I still, it's a dark era in my camera roll. Like, I don't ever go back and look at that. I never even hearted them or anything. It would be very challenging for me to, well, you know, like you heart something and then it like shows up in your favorites, and like you go to your favorites to look for something else, and then you like briefly get reminded of all the other you favorited. I don't know. Like, I just feel like the way that we both do content, that for grabs. Whereas like I wouldn't really do that to the average person, but it feels like everything's just kind of out in the open, you know?
Was there any time you felt like you betrayed somebody, or like maybe you were like, damn, I should have never done that? I think it bothered. Because I thought, I speak with Ack in referential terms because he's obviously a pioneer of my type of content. But from afar, it always looked like he like very much, and I don't have an issue with people caring about women that they think are beneath like certain people. Like if you like a girl, you like a girl. But it seems like he kind of likes these women that maybe, you know, acting crazy. Yeah.
I mean, I feel like he's still in like a kind of stunted maturity phase of his life where like, you know, even when I was asking him about this yesterday, where I was like, you need to date like a girl who's like more on your level. And like, you know, I suggested a couple of people, and he was like, I don't like famous girls. But to me, that's kind of like telling on yourself, because it's like a famous girl has enough leverage that you have to basically like treat each other like you're equals, probably, right? And like, I feel like a famous girl is gonna kind of like famous, quote unquote, because it's not like famous is everything, but like famous or well known or respected in her field or whatever, like that. a girl like that is going to expect a different level of treatment. You're going to end up being able to build something together. I feel like he's kind of still in this sort of like state where these like thoughts are very like intriguing to him. And I think that like most people kind of, you have to get past that at some point. I think he will probably get past it at some point, but because like these girls are just having a bad impact on his life. Like Selena had a bad impact on his life. The other girl had a terrible impact. She's like had more of a negative impact on his life than like all these big that he's beefed with, you know? So, I mean, I feel like he got to get past that at some point, but it's going to take some kind of like emotional change, I think.
I try not to be judgmental because I feel like if I ever pop off like that, I might be exactly the same. So,
yeah, but it's one thing to just much. It's another thing to like really date them and have like it like get them into a position where they can have this like negative effect on your life, you know?
Like cracking an egg on you during the podcast.
We never even really got an explanation for that, did we? I think he said it was a prank war. I don't know if that's enough of an explanation. You know, like
you should have Lena do that to you, like during
Brian Pumper me real quick. Yeah.
Brian Pumper.
That's a Brian Pumper original.
Yeah,
she invented that.
She got to pay homage.
I actually did tell her at one point that I wanted to like fake, like make like a fake like clip of me like banging her from behind and then hit her with the egg. I don't think she was about it.
Is Lena kind of like a stable? Because she just is. What are we surprised? What would be surprising about your relationship with Lena? Is she like the business minded?
She's pragmatic, business minded. Like when you see how serious I take my job and my career and everything, it's like so influenced by her because she's somebody that like has her together. Her whole life is in order. She's super analytical about everything. And when she met me, I was just wilding, like partying my like, you know, ordering sushi at 3 o'clock in the morning, you know, sleep until 1. Like, and once I got with her, like everybody like has this idea that me and her just have this like purely debaucherous relationship. But in reality, it's like she was a very critical part in me like growing up and like becoming an adult, you know, and she probably wishes that I would grow up a little bit more. But for sure, like, I mean, people would be shocked by how just normal and boring our relationship is and how much our relationship is just based on like being absolutely in love with our kid and just like wanting to spend time with her and everything like that. So like, I don't know, everything about me and her relationship is definitely by far the healthiest relationship I've ever been in my life. It's like when I look at all my other friends' relationships, a lot of times I'm like, holy like I can't believe you're still living like that at this point. Like, so I mean, people like kind of like see the thing, they're like, oh, you guys do there, and that's crazy. But they kind of miss the fact that like the other 99% of our life is very, very, I mean, if anything, she's just like caused me to like she was just gone. She was in Japan for 2 weeks. And so I had 2 weeks straight of being immersed in this content. So it's like, I'm watching clips from the Reddit or I'm watching like videos on TikTok and shit when I'm in bed at, you know, midnight. And like, you know, I don't do that with her. Like, it's more like everything is more. I have like she's kind of presiding over my lifestyle. That's so awesome. I'm kind of operating in like a much more like professional way a lot of times when she's around. And as soon as she's gone, it's like the chains are off. I don't know.
Are you Charlamagne's puppet?
I don't think I've talked to Charlamagne since 2017.
No, but you never talk about him. So I thought like, I felt like, I was just joking about being Charlamagne's puppet, but I feel like you guys have a good relationship or something like that. Well, I mean, because you're not as like, you don't talk about it. Even he's a big figure, you're not.
He's had plenty of opportunities to talk about me, or he's like talked about me on the Breakfast Club and been like mostly pretty cool. It's not like he used it as an opportunity to take shots at me, but like I did Brilliant Idiots in, I think it was 2017, when I was briefly signed with Loudspeakers. That was kind of like a Chris Morrow layup that he helped me get on Brilliant Idiots before it was before Andy Schultz was like what he became these days. And and then I interviewed him on No Jumper and have not really talked to him since. But I don't think I ever messaged him or anything since as well. Awesome. So I never really tried to get in touch with him, but I respect Charlamagne.
Okay, cool. Okay.
No, I don't really watch that. I watch Brilliant Idiots once in a blue moon. But if I'm in a comedy style, you remember when they used to say that all the time?
Comedy style? Yeah.
Joe used to say that.
Comedy style, yeah, I remember that.
But it was like a way of like saying that like, okay, we're kind of like switching modes. Like we're doing this for laughs. That kind of got replaced by COE maybe.
COE, definitely. There's always an evolution of like the etymology of things. But with that said, why are stars dying?
Why are they dying?
Yeah, there was Sophia, right?
Rest in peace, man. She was a real one. Like she was in this one vlog I did with Lil Pump in like 2016.
That's a long time ago, yeah.
I don't know how died either, but I don't know. I mean, some percentage of girls who get into kind of messed up on drugs and shit. I don't actually know that about her, but I guess maybe she had like a bunch of crazy. I saw people. I don't even want to put that on her because I seen a bunch of people acting like this was something that was like done to her. So I have no idea how that happened. The Emily Willis thing, you know, that seems like it's more of like a clear-cut example of just a girl who was a star, but then was also just like too deep in the drug thing. And
there was another one, I forgot her name, but she was like found overdosed, but for like 3 days. Nobody had found her body with her husband. And then there was another one who like put a in her head. And I was like, that is insane. And it's like, what's going on? Obviously, it's not endemic of the whole thing. Like that could happen at any time. But I do figure the stakes are high in that industry more so than others. Yeah.
I think, you know, there's some percentage of girls that just like doing the only career that they are really like capable of holding down while they're in the midst of their addiction, you know?
Damn. Yeah,
and so, you know, like a lot of people, a lot of girls I know is like this thing, this like engine that is like driving them being able to basically like live the best life that they want. They get to have a bunch, they get to, you know, make an exorbitant amount of money from just having fun on camera. And it's like no pain in the ass at all. Like for me, that's surely how it is. But for some people, it's kind of like last resort of like, oh, I can't imagine myself going into a law office 8 hours a day. So I'm going to do this thing. And then like, you know, that's like with somebody like Emily Willis, I had I've been around her so much. I had no idea she had like a real drug problem. But I also haven't been around her probably in like 4 years. So it was like a long runway there where I didn't really know what she had going on.
Well, in real life, you don't know what your coworkers are doing, right? In their own time. Like sometimes it's probably like that in the industry, but maybe it's a lonely thing if you don't have, like you have a rock, right? You have Lena, and you had a whole pre-existing successful thing going on before you entered, and I assume that's not at all common. Like,
I'm just
okay, salute. Any questions for me? If you have any questions for me, man, come on, man, bring them.
What time is it? Bro, I got up so early.
We're about to wrap up.
I slept so little last night as a result of being at Academics' studio till 2 in the morning.
Well, I thought you were just anxious to sit down with me. Like, man, I don't know what.
No, because I was thinking, I'm like, I can't be late because I know this mother paying for the space, so I can't be late because that would be like really disrespectful.
And I just want to say I switched studios because Queenzflip is looking for me, and I thought he's not going to come to WTF. So now I'm at WTF Central Air. It was hot when I interviewed Rory.
If Queenzflip walked in here right now, angry, trying to fight you, it's not a skit. It's like a real attempted fade. And if I just stood to the side and was like, "This ain't my problem," and I didn't get involved, would you be like really disappointed in me, or do I have to fight him with you?
I would expect you to call the cops.
No.
You don't have to do anything, but I would expect you to call the cops. Yeah, ASAP, like speed dial.
I would on your behalf.
You don't say that because
I think no, me and you together could Queenzflip up. He's like a little dude, right? Like I feel like I could maybe up on my own. I don't know.
I'm not talking about. You're actually pretty intimidating because you're tall.
I've never been around him. I don't know how big he is.
Yeah, I don't want to invite that, but I'm just like you're like way bigger than Flip.
Do you think that like doing all those skits over the years has like made him prepared for a fade? When the last time he fought somebody was?
I think Flip is actually of that background. I do think that. I think he's not lying when he says he's been in certain things and exchanges.
Oh, word. What gang is he from? Do we know?
I don't.
No.
That's your style of content. No, I don't know.
Not Queenzflip though. I like him.
I like Flip. I've always enjoyed Flip's content. I feel like here's my psychology of Flip. I think he believes that he's the reason Joe talks about me so much. So in a certain sense, he feels ownership of my ascension. I don't think I've ascended that much. I think I'm just like really dedicated and I talk about things in a way that is substantive. But he every time he speaks about me, he's like, I'm the reason you get mentioned on the show. And I'm like, I think that's why he feels like I betrayed him. But I don't know. I feel like the show was already making allusions to me way before his arrival, and Rory and Mal were speaking about
They are just so soft. That, like, the fact that your content could make so many people upset when I feel like your content is so blatantly coming from a place of love and nurturing, and that like you want them to be better. When you compare that to like some of the out there of people making content about No Jumper that is like so blatantly rooted in like hatred,
Yeah.
it's like almost impossible for me to imagine that they don't want to embrace you, because it seems like
Joe, I think Joe knows that I rock with him heavy. Like in any debate like I have with anybody, whatever platform I may end up on, I'm gonna talk about Joe with referential terms. I'm gonna talk about, like, to me, he's like up there with Star as one of the greatest to ever do it, Charlamagne, and like the early hip hop radio days. But the rest of the cast, they take it to heart in ways that is kind of insane. Like Ish, Ice, like I know I got under Ice's skin, and I was like surprised because he kind of is one of those guys that pretends not to care about things. But I think Joe gets it. I don't think everybody else does.
yeah, I mean, I guess, but man, you would just think that they're getting enough positive attention online that they would be able to handle somebody having a little bit of a critique, especially if the critique is like clearly sort of fair, and like even if you don't agree with it, it's just not like, it's just blatantly not coming from a place of like wanting to see them perish, I think.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to tell you this too. My final thing is that the other day, I clicked on a clip, and it was Wack. It was Wack on the podcast with T Rell and AD.
Oh no!
And in that clip, AD spends like multiple minutes talking about the fact that like when his music career was cracking off, that he went to Miami and Wack got him a performance at Live. Like he got to go up and do a song. And I was just thinking, like, I have heard AD tell this story like 15 times on the podcast, and I cannot believe he's on his own platform still telling this story. I just like, AD, please step it up.
I thought you were gonna talk about him saying that I'm trying to replace Flacco.
No, I didn't even watch that clip, because that's just so like, he's so bad at like trying to put together an argument. Like he doesn't know that me and you and Flacco are talking every single day in a group chat. It's like the least compelling argument ever.
Yeah. Oh. Well, hey, FiggMunity, I'm sorry. Well, I'm not sorry. Do your thing, man. All right. All right. Thank you so much, Adam. Pleasure. I hope you have a great time in New York.
Appreciate you, Danny.
Salute.
Much love.